Mini episode 816 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to mini episode number 816 of the FDH Lounge. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris with you today with a tremendous conversation. A gentleman who is a friend of a friend who we have lined up for the show, somebody with a great background in the world of football, somebody who has done some entrepreneurship in his time since being in the game, and again, somebody that we have a very good mutual friend in Vernon Turner with, and I believe that he was responsible in helping to make this booking happen, so very grateful for that. But a gentleman who had an excellent career in the NFL, Chidi Ahanotu, joining us today on the show. And, again, it's going to be a real pleasure to be able to pick his brain about football. It's certainly a very hot time with free agency taking shape officially just on the day that we are taping this, and a lot that is going on in the league, and what will be a real whirlwind leading up to the NFL draft at the end of April. But a pleasure to be able to have you on the show, Chidi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all ours, sir. It's always great to be able to talk about what is really, again, with all due respect to baseball, which got dubbed the national pastime, really hasn't been for some time now. Football, really sort of the national obsession in this country, and somebody like you with as much background in the game as you had, some of the players that you were around and played with, but I'd like to start there as far as, gentlemen that you played with, and not least of which our mutual friend, Vernon Turner, who, again, we at the FDH Lounge really had gotten to know in a different context. His book comes out in 2011, and that was when he had first sort of come clean with the world about the circumstances that he'd been through, the extreme struggles that he went through in life leading up to the NFL, and really how he needed to make the NFL to be able to keep his family together financially. And it was something that he sort of underscored at the time, which is that he was not just coming clean with the world, but ultimately that almost nobody around him at any point along the way had any kind of insight as to what was happening. This is stuff that whether it was too sensitive to talk about at the time, because he was still dealing with the aftermath of it, something that really wasn't put out there amongst his NFL brethren when he was playing. So I'm really interested to know, from your perspective, you knew the man in a different way. You were somebody who played with him. I'm sure saw him as an underdog in the one sense, because he's a guy who was primarily a special teams player. Every year was kind of sweating it out just to make the roster. So he's physically an underdog, but you don't have any idea the life underdog story until years later. So what has that been like for you, from your perspective, to learn all of this about the man subsequently?
Well, I'm not alone now that, the story is out. I mean, many of our former teammates have just really been blown away by the story. I mean, Vernon was always, a pleasure to be around, and nothing but smiles in the locker room, and one of the good guys. So you would never have thought that would be his background. But, in the NFL, those, people think it's a very close-knit locker room, and it's big corporation. It's big business, and a lot of times, they even tell you, leave your personal issues at home, don't bring it into the locker room. So it's not uncommon for fellow players not to really know what's going on in each other's lives. I went through something myself during my playing days, and no one knew about it, and they probably still don't know about it, So it's not uncommon, but truly amazing, what Vernon had to deal with and his road. And there's a lot of those stories in the NFL and pro sports, I believe, in general.
That's interesting because I hadn't really thought of it that way until you said that, but it makes sense that the culture of the league, it wouldn't necessarily be encouraging Vernon to open up about these things. I mean, he was a very private person about these issues, but certainly being in that culture, it wasn't going to do anything to sort of pry open and make him more willing to talk about what was going on with him. And the story, the way that it's come out subsequently, with it really blowing up on the Players Tribune and being one of the biggest stories that they ever had on the site there as far as a sensation, and then setting the stage subsequently to become the first motion picture that the Players Tribune and Derek Jeter are going to be a part of. Upon learning the whole story, it can't be any kind of a surprise to you that something like that would be the subject of such a large spotlight motion picture project like this one here, because certainly when you find out what the man's been through, you sit back and you just say, wow, yeah, I can see why that would be something that the world will be fascinated by.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the way everything's coming about, it's like winning the lottery, really, I mean, yeah. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. I mean, it's a fascinating story, but I have a sports and entertainment marketing firm that I've had since my later days in the NFL, actually. But that the way these things come about, you can't. There's no formula, but they happen to be put in front of the right people, and things kind of took off from there. But it's a great, like I said, it's like winning the lottery. I mean, and it couldn't have happened to a better person than Vernon. I mean, I'm just really happy for him. That he got his book done. I'm writing my own book about my own life, and I can tell you it's a very large and difficult endeavor, to say the least, just to write the book. And that fact that they're optioning it to a full feature film is just amazing. I'm just really happy for him.
Absolutely, and I hope it's something that he can really take solace from, because again, the burden that he carries from everything that he went through, in a lot of ways, he's open about this, haunts him to this day. So yeah, I hope that getting to realize the dream of taking that inspirational message out there to people and showing them what they can accomplish, I hope that does a lot for him, and I trust that it will. Now, you touched on something there that I want to circle back around here to. I assume that you were referring to Magellan Entertainment there as far as the management firm that you were speaking of. And from a little bit of the digging I was doing here, I see that some of the clients have been Usain Bolt and Antonio Tarver. So how ultimately, what's the path like from having a long, successful NFL career as you did to being able to kind of spin off into doing these other things here? That in and of itself seems like a fascinating story.
Oh, wow. I mean, it has been, I was a 6th round draft pick. I was blessed to play 12 years in the NFL. I kind of, I was never the big star on any team I was on. The biggest name and all that kind of good stuff. But my own story blows me away, honestly, to tell you the truth. And I've had an opportunity to work with a number of, big name celebrities and every industry in sports and entertainment industry. And honestly, I tell people, I just shrug my shoulders. Like, I don't know why me, I don't know. Like, it just seemed to, that I truly believe that it's God, honestly, that put these things in front of me. I did have an opportunity to work on Usain Bolt's career. My former business partner reached out to me at the 2008 Olympics and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I said, "Sure," and that was it. So these kind of things just have kind of unfolded themselves in front of me over my lifetime. And, I'm 46 years old. I got 3 children, and one's in college, and I'm still bewildered by my own career. I don't know why me? You know, I didn't do anything in particular to get those kind of associations. I mean, you know, I just living life and my walking path, and things just happen. You know, so I don't like to take too much credit for it, because you know it wasn't like rocket science. You know, it's just people business. And for some reason, people have, felt in a certain way to entrust me in doing business with them and the like. So, it's been very interesting working in that industry on the opposite side and trying to get endorsement deals and marketing deals, and we worked on trying to finance films, and that whole behind the scenes of the sports and entertainment industries has been very interesting, to say the least. And as a player, when I was on the other side of things, I really didn't truly appreciate what happens behind the scenes. And it's an industry which, like I said, it's a people business. It's, about who you know, and I really enjoy it. Actually, I've enjoyed both sides of the coin, behind the scenes and
sure,
and on the front stage.
Well, I'm really looking forward to when the book comes out, because after you've kind of worked your way through talking about these things and thinking about them and kind of laying them out, I'm sure it's going to be a very fascinating read, and I'm sure myself and a good chunk of the audience would be very interested in that. And I like what you said there. I like the way you phrased it. I would personally, in my opinion, would strongly concur about God's path for you and how it's all kind of unfolded, and couldn't agree stronger about that and why things happen for all of us. There was one thing on your bio that kind of caught my eye a little bit here that I'm wondering about, and that being, given that I understand that your formative years were out in Berkeley, California, and with you going to school at Cal, how much did being in the local market there, how much did that do to put you on the radar of the Cal Golden Bears?
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. I mean, I went to Berkeley High School, and we got very good at all during my years there. I don't even know if we won one game the whole time I was there. So, we were just 2 blocks down the street from Cal's campus, from Cal Berkeley's campus. So I do believe that played a huge part in them, in myself getting on their radar. And then I went further and I participated in their summer football camp after my junior year in high school, which cemented that I was on their radar. Actually, I don't think I was even on their radar until I went to that camp, to tell you the truth, even though my school is two blocks down the street from the campus, because we just, guys leaving my high school and going off to play college during my time, that was not common. That was not common for guys to go off and play Division I football anywhere. So that was the type of history and the environment that I grew up in. So it was, I really believe that when I went to their camp, that was the first time that I even been around true football instruction, and I just soaked it up like a sponge. I mean, they put me in 4 different positions, and they just told me what to do, and I do it, and I'd excel at it. And they were really, excited about me in that camp. I mean, it's something that I never forget, because it was the first time that I realized how good I might just be able to be,
That had to be very exciting. Yeah, when the light bulb goes off and you see what's possible for you, that had to be just a real, almost life-altering moment, huh?
Oh, definitely, because I was surrounded by some of the top players in the San Francisco Bay Area who attended that camp, and like I said, coming from a program where we didn't get many accolades or recognition, and we didn't win very much, to go into that kind of environment and excel was definitely a light bulb eye-popping experience. I mean, I went on to play my senior year, and I thought I was going to get a scholarship offer from them, but so the recruiting coordinator got fired or for doing something against NCAA regulation or something, and a new guy comes in, and he had his own idea of who he wanted to go after. So I wasn't one of those guys. So I ended up having to walk on to the team. I mean, I had a preferred walk-on offer there. I got in academically to Berkeley, and I said, well, from the reaction from the coaches, and I believe I probably could earn a scholarship in this situation, And so I went ahead and walked on, and after my second year, I got that scholarship.
That's tremendous, yeah, because that's obviously the start of everything that came from that point afterwards, a successful career there, and then subsequently getting into the pros for a nice long stretch, and a lot of, I would say, the formative years kind of leading up. You were there from when things were very kind of poor in Tampa Bay, all the way up through the cusp of when they became that Super Bowl team that they would become for the 2002 season. And that had to be a very, very interesting ride. And one of the things that I've learned in the course of being friends with Vernon was just how big of a deal it was when he ran back that punt for the touchdown. And it's one of those things, when I first saw that YouTube video where they were speculating that summer on TV about, is this the guy that's going to break the 18-year drought for the franchise? You think to yourself, how is this even possible that it was that big of a deal? But it was that big of a deal because that was a team that, outside of maybe the 1979 season, really didn't have a lot to hang its hat on. So you really saw the major progression of a franchise that was really kind of scratching for any kind of relevance all the way up to the cusp of what they would become.
Yeah, that's another incredible journey that I was blessed to be a part of. Vernon actually, I mean, I've been around a lot of athletes. I mean, he's one of the most gifted athletes I've ever been around.
Oh yeah,
and he didn't get that recognition during his NFL career. I think, the game has changed where a guy like Vernon could actually be the star guy. He was a smaller guy. He's a Wes Welker type,
right.
He's a Julian Edelman type. In this day and age of NFL, I think Vernon would have had a great opportunity to just, be a household name.
I'm so glad you said that because he and I have had this conversation, I think, on air and off air over the years, and just kind of talked about this a little bit because you had at that point in time, me being somebody as a lifelong Clevelander that's been cursed to be a Browns fan, I have my memories of Eric Metcalf at the time, who was starting to get a little bit of prominence. And then you had Dave Maggott a little bit and some other contemporaries, but he and I have kind of had this conversation about it wasn't really until I would say probably turn of the century, Brian Westbrook, that with Vernon being a scat back, he had to scrape and scratch for the opportunities he could get because you were still, if I want to use that Hollywood term here, typecast. You were always typecast if you were a tiny guy. People didn't care how fast you were, but you are absolutely right. In today's game, if you can run fast, you look at what happened with John Ross at the Combine, and everybody's losing their minds about the time that he put up there. Like it took longer than it should have, unfortunately, for guys like Vernon. But you are absolutely right, Chidi. We've gotten to a time today where if you are that fast, people really aren't putting any kind of a ceiling on you on what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Vernon and I came up in an era where, honestly, there's a lot of steroid use. And there was an emphasis on being big and strong, and if you weren't big and strong, this prototype-looking player, then you weren't, supposedly fit for the NFL. So, and even college too. I mean, it was rampant. I came up in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So, it's definitely true that a player like Vernon Turner, I mean, they're rampant all through the NFL now, and definitely could have been household name and possibly a Hall of Famer if you ask me. I mean, he had all the heart, desire, passion, and the physical skills. He was an amazing athlete. So, it's just a situation circumstance. That's what it is.
Oh yeah, and I've said this to friends of mine to kind of give a little bit of context when I tell them about Vernon, is the whole thing about leading up to when he had that punt return that I think is going to factor. A spoiler alert, I think that's going to be an important part of the movie when he gets the touchdown. But leading up to that week, this is what I tell my friends, and then their eyes kind of pop out, is that your coach at the time, Sam Weiss, was using him as the guy to mimic Barry Sanders. He was the Barry Sanders understudy in Detroit, and that's the guy in practice that you guys were lining up against to do the Barry Sanders type stuff. I mean, you're not just going to put any schmuck in that situation, Chidi.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. Right. I mean, that goes to speak on how athletic Vernon was. And that punt return that he had, man, that was one of the prettiest returns I've ever seen. I mean, I watch it over and over again. Just, it's pretty. It's just sweet. That sweetness in live and color, man. That was one of the best I've ever seen.
Absolutely. And I'm sure Sweetness himself was pretty proud at the time when that happened, him being a pen pal of Vernon's and somebody who imparted his training techniques and everything like that. So much of what Walter Payton imparted to him was important in terms of shaping Vernon into the kind of player that he was. Because, again, as tiny as he is by NFL standards, he had to work his way up just to even get to that point. He was a lot tinier before that point. So just to get to the minimum baseline of what you would need to be in the NFL in the 90s, where you are already typecast for being a small guy, that's kind of a fascinating story unto itself. But there's another thing here too, where and I don't want to have it be a crutch here, where I keep relying on things with Vernon for a frame of reference here, but there's a philosophical thing that I want to kind of get into, because I know from something I read that you had said, I think this was a Deadspin column as far as the toll the football takes on you. And I know from talking to Vernon conversationally, he comes down on the other side of that, because from his perspective, which I completely understand, football saved his life, saved his family's life. He's not going to say a cross word against it. And were I in his position, I would probably feel exactly the same way. But I completely understood your point of view in that column as far as the toll that the game takes on you. And the one thing that I did think as I was reading this here is, you're talking about, football being a gladiator sport and everything like that, and that nobody cares. The one point where I would somewhat kind of differ with that is to say, there are people out there, there's myself and a handful of other people who would say, I'm not going to ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And that's why I don't cry about the safety regulations in the game, and anything they ever want to do in the name of, keeping you guys in one piece more, I'm okay with, because, I'm not a hypocrite. I wouldn't want to have that kind of stuff done to me. So I'm not going to argue that we're a sizable minority, Chidi, but there are those of us out there that do completely agree with where you're coming from, and that would want to see as much safety stuff as there could be in there, never mind what anybody else would say about lowering the excitement in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the Deadspin article I wrote about, or interviewed
That's right.
about.
Yes, sir.
About the concussions and the changes.
Yes, the toll the game
rules
takes on you. Yes. I thought you raised some excellent points.
Yeah, I mean, that was a while ago that I did that one, but I mean, I still had the same position. If I recall it correctly, they were asking me, if I'm for the rule changes. I believe that's what the article was about.
Right.
I'm totally for it. I mean, I love what's happened with the game. I mean, I have 3 sons, and my middle boy, he plays, and he's doing very well in high school and getting a lot of offers right now. So really proud of him. But I'm so for it. I wish that things had been that way when I played. I've seen former teammates and good friends. We've lost them, through suicide, and it's been very hard seeing that and seeing debilitating health all around you. And myself, I have issues, and a lot of guys I know, and so I wish those medical advances, health advances, safety advances were there when we played. And I'm totally for what they're doing now. It's unfortunate how we had to get here, what it took to get here, but we're here, and I'm happy for that. I'm very happy about that. And I being a defensive player, especially defensive lineman, I'm a little. I understand what they're trying to do for the quarterbacks. I think they haven't, ironed all that out yet, because sometimes those calls are very questionable.
Sure.
I'm spending my Sundays screaming to the TV, like, where is he supposed to hit him? What's he supposed to do? Tag him? What's he supposed to do? So those kind of things still getting ironed out, and I think they will be. But I don't think it's affected the game. I think the game is still exciting. I think there's still, big hits. It's just safer big hits. And, I'm very excited about the direction the game is going.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely, and I'm in favor of whatever else they want to do that's going to help people to live longer, safer lives after they're done playing. And I would think that anybody with a conscience would agree. But a question I want to put to you, this is something that we're doing now on the show with our football experts, trying to get some perspective. First guy that we did this with was N.D. Kalu a couple months back, and he gave a really, really outstanding answer. And what's interesting in looking at your bio is that it kind of ties in here, because it's a philosophical question about the defensive side of football. And the advances that we've seen on the offensive side with the spread and everything like that. And the shorthand version of my question is, when we get the Mike Martz of defense in the NFL, what's that going to look like? Interesting to me, I look at your bio, you actually played for the man as a head coach. So you understand the mind that he brought to the offensive side of the ball, particularly in the advances that he made there. And again, I'm not putting everything on him. I understand it goes further back, Mouse Davis, June Jones, Jerry Glanville, et cetera. I mean, he wasn't the first guy to do spread-like things. But it's just a shorthand kind of a thing here. I don't think we've seen the kind of innovation defensively that you saw from that kind of school of thought offensively. If we get a defensive guy in the league that's doing something like that, what's your best guess on what that innovation might look like?
Okay, well.
Just give me anything. I'm really interested.
Well, no, I mean, I sit up late at night drafting and drawing up those kind of defenses all the time. No, I'm just playing with you. No, that's very interesting, and I believe you're right. That guy hasn't come about. I mean, honestly, I have spent some years since I retired trying to push a certain defensive pass rush scheme that I was using in my last years in the league. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get people to sit down and just take a look at something. I mean, I played 12 years in the league, and I'm talking to people who I know, not just some random coach. But it's very hard to get guys to sit down and look at it. And it's I guess a lot of politics. I still haven't understood that side of the ball yet. But I have been trying to – I had my own little madman what they used to call Mike Martz. They used to call him
I know what you mean. I can't think of it.
They called Sam Weiss Wacky Weiss. They called Mike Martz the Mad Genius or something. I can't remember what they used to call him.
Genius. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah. So I had my own version of that for the defensive pass rush that I actually got an opportunity to present to the Buccaneers coaching staff, the head coach, Dirk Cutter, he gave me the opportunity to kind of hold court in front of the defensive coaches and himself before last season.
Okay.
But he hasn't employed it yet. But
I won't press further on the specifics.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you what exactly it is, but I do believe that I'm on to something with what I have created or devised, and that you're right. I mean, that's the next stage, like the mad scientist for the defense, and to evolve the defense to a different game, because essentially, the game is kind of, it's been the same on the defense side of the ball for generations. I mean, there's some tweaks here and there, but, for the most part, the defensive side of the game is resembles, what they were doing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, like I said, there's some tweaks. I don't want to, take too much away from the evolution of the game, but I'm saying the basics of the defensive structure is kind of still the same,
Right.
And I think what that would look like, to answer your question in a long way, I'm taking the long route to answer your question. I think it would look. I think it would look crazy. I think it would revolutionize. I mean, I think you're talking about different, prototypically different type of players playing on the front seven. I think it would take a different scheme where you may have totally different alignments that, quote unquote, aren't structurally sound as far as defensive fronts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what prevents the defense from evolving like the offense has, because the offense has a luxury to experiment more than the defense does. The defense, you throw some crazy front out there and it gets gashed for a 70-yard touchdown, there's going to be heads rolling on the chopping block for that.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you got to justify why you did it, and then you're basing it on something that goes totally against football norms. So, but it's going to take somebody daring, a Bill Belichick type that has that leeway, from their general manager and the owners, and willing to, invest in that coach for the long haul. And I think that's what it's going to take,
Keeping in mind, that this is a show where we talk all topics, really, and hundreds of hours under our belt. You have convinced me, you and ND Kalu have convinced me this might be the greatest question in the history of the show based on how you guys have answered it. I mean, I think it's outstanding, just that, you can't fully elaborate on that because you've shared it with Dirk Cutter and they might still use something. So that is so perfect. That was part of your answer, that you've thought about this in that kind of a way. I'm going to tell you what ND Kalu said, and you react to this. He said he thinks it's going to be a thing where you have 3 down linemen up there more or less taking up space and 8 guys behind them that are really kind of pretty amorphous. But the definition between linebackers and defensive backs is going to be blurry. And the way that we're disguising coverages today is going to be nothing compared to what's coming. Guys will actually be literally interchangeable among those 8 guys. So how plausible do you think that might be?
I think that's very plausible. I think that's definitely very plausible. That's kind of direction the NFL's going now. As far as the linebackers are looking like strong safeties, free safety type athletes, smaller, quicker athletes. So I think that's definitely plausible. I don't know about that front three that he predicted, with the front 3 just taking up space. Because the thing is, I mean, I don't care what defense you are in, if you're not getting pass pass rush or even pressure,
Right.
that defense is not going to succeed. You know,
Sure. I don't want to characterize him inaccurately. I think he meant more or less like the way we view defensive linemen in the 3-4. I don't want to mischaracterize what he was saying. Like in the 3-4, you know what I'm saying? Like you can get pressure from them, but you're not counting on it as much. Does that make sense? Like in the 4-3, you're more expected to get pressure from the defensive lineman.
No, okay. Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely plausible, you know, and I think that's where the NFL's kind of, you know, going that direction as it is, you know. So, you know, you might see more of that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I thought his answer was very thought-provoking, as was yours. And, I'm just going to keep throwing this out every time we get a football expert on here because we're 2 for 2 on getting great thought-provoking answers there. One of the things I wanted to ask you about as well, too, Eli, I talked about this briefly off air, is that you had gone on record recently with your thoughts on T.O. making the Hall of Fame and the possibility of people having voted against him. I would say the probability, I think, of some of the writers going against him for personal reasons, because when you look at the football resume and is he a Hall of Famer, sometimes we get into this stuff with the sports writers and is so-and-so a first ballot Hall of Famer, and that seems to matter to some people for whatever reasons, but basically for reasons of, if nothing else, pettiness, not putting him in there. You had some very thought-provoking observations on what it was like to be a teammate and somewhat of a friend of Terrell Owens.
Yeah, you know, it was, the power of social media. You know, I was just posting on my former teammate Derek Deese's page where he posted something about T.O. being snubbed. And I just put a short little comment in there about, you know, whether you like a player or not should not, you know, be a factor. I mean, it's about, you know, what you do on the football field. And I said the voters should do their job and not use it as a time to be vindictive or spiteful against somebody they might not have liked. So one of his Facebook friends was Matt Mioki, which I'm probably saying his last name wrong, who I didn't know that he happened to be one of the voters. And he asked me, would you mind writing a letter? And I said, sure, because, you know, I'm somewhat of a writer. I've done some writing and some sports journalism and journal for the Peter Report here in Tampa and some other stuff. And I said I'm writing my own books. I said, I'm sure I'll write a letter. And I was happy to do so because I don't think that's right. I just don't think that's right. You know, knowing what we put our lives, our bodies on the line out there in the NFL, to then have your personality be, used against you or used as what they measure your worth as far as making the Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't think that should come into play at all. And so I took, I had the opportunity to write that letter, and I was happy to do so, and people were blown away by it. And I'm glad I could help. Just the other day, Terrell Owens himself shot me back a message. I think it was yesterday, actually, or the day before. Just a heartfelt thank you letter. From him, saying that him and his family were just very, very moved and very touched by the letter, and just was really thanking me so much for just expressing those opinions. So that was touching for me to get that from T.O. But basically that was the gist of the letter. That I had an opportunity to play against T.O. I had an opportunity to be on the same team as him as well. And, my family on my mom's side, they're from the same town. So
mm-hmm.
they taught Terrell Owens in elementary school. So I had a unique perspective, and also I kind of frameworked the letter around the fact that T.O. and I rode on the same travel bus together. You know, there's usually 3 or 4 buses, and we were always on bus number 3, and sat all the way in the back. And that was my first year with the 49ers, my only year, 2003. And first time really, you know, meeting Terrell after all these years of playing against him. Terrell was my first time, you know, actually meeting him. But those trips on that bus, you know, we hey, hello, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, handshake or whatever. And pretty much to sit there in silence. And, you know, I said that's one of the reasons why I rode that bus. I was 11th year in the league at that point. I just wanted silence, you know. I just wanted to do my job, you know, the older player. And, you know, those rides to and from the airport or to the game, to stadiums was just a moment where I could kind of just get myself together, you know, not be on the other buses where there, you know, a lot of carousing. And then the first bus would be, you know, the head coach, and that was always the bus that was very serious. You know, everybody was, you know, team captains and those kind of guys. So, but I got opportunity to sit there and you know, I you know, I said I wasn't snooping, but you know, T.O. would be on his phone and he talking to whoever he was talking to, whether it's friends and family or, you know, expressing himself. And, you know, those totally candid moments that voters don't see or not privy to, the Hall of Fame voters are not, I got to see the real man. I got to hear the real man. And I wanted to express that, you know. It's just I think just the fact that he was on bus 3, on that bus, that type of bus, people probably wouldn't expect that because they expected T.O. to be full of ego and, you know, to be all in the mix, as they used to say. You know, all on the bus where everything was going down and all the cool players could, you know, kind of, you know, chop it up and, you know, kind of get a little rowdy or whatever they might think happens on the bus. The last place they think T.O. would be on was the bus where there's a bunch of ragtag kind of, you know, ball boys and, you know, little, you know, maybe little media guests from some smaller publication. You know, it was just a ragtag group on that bus. And it wasn't that alone, I think, was I thought people should know that, you know, because that's not what you would think where T.O. would be, I don't think. You know, you think he'd be hanging out with all the other star players, you know, and all other cool guys. No, that's probably
right. Sure, but that's great insight on your part, Chidi. And again, and I'm not, I'm certainly not surprised by this. You know, having done some research before this, but a great, insightful conversation with you, sir. I just want to thank you for your time, and please don't be a stranger, particularly as your book project is ongoing and you're getting ready to get that out there to the world. I would love to have you back on the show subsequently here and catch up with you and keep picking your brain about football and a lot of other matters. Thank you so much for making time for us today, Chidi.
All right, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. A great conversation, sir. Thank you so much. I want to thank again, everybody, Chidi Ahanotu for coming on the show with us today. A great FDH Lounge mini episode here, number 816. And thank you all, everybody, for tuning in to us today on the FDH Lounge.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.